Hello, Chloe. Where are you?
No, Harry, don't worry. Don't worry. I'll be on my way, I promise. Sorry, Harry.
Chloe, I didn't think you were going to make it there.
I'm here now, aren't I?
And we're going live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspective, coming to you live from the Sonic Arts Research Centre, right here at Queen's University Belfast. I'm Harry Mitchell.
And I'm Chloe Murray. We aim to give you a unique perspective on what's happening all around Northern Ireland.
Everyone involved in this programme are part of the second year class of BA Broadcast Production. We've been working over the past 12 weeks to develop and produce QUB's first ever student-led live television programme.
Coming up on Fresh Perspective, we speak to filmmakers about Northern Ireland's unique landscape, history and exciting prospects within the television and film industry.
And recently back in Belfast, we caught up with critically acclaimed documentarian and filmmaker Marcus Robinson at the premiere of his latest documentary, An Engineer Imagines.
Over 2 years after the collapse of the Northern Irish Executive, we examine the impact that Stormont's shutdown has had on social legislation and the unsettling consequences for the LGBTQ+ community.
And they've taken Belfast by storm with their dance, pop and R&B hits. But who are 2Degrees? We'll have the boys live in studio chatting all things acoustic, and they will close the show with their latest single, Moon Dancing.
Make sure to join the conversation online using the hashtag FreshPerspective, and also follow us on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter at QTV Belfast.
What are you waiting for? Come on.
And here we are in our brand new studio. We've got our set, our lovely crew.
And of course, our fabulous studio audience. So let's get on with the show. Derry Girls first aired in January 2018. The comedy series was met with critical acclaim, being the most viewed series in Northern Ireland since records began. The programme, written by Queen's University graduate Lisa McGee, won the Radio Times' 2018 Comedy Champion Award and picked up Best Comedy at the 2018 Irish Film and Television Awards.
Now, an international success after Netflix's purchase of the show, Derry Girls is now in its second series. Here's a little reminder of why the show became Channel 4's most successful comedy since Father Ted almost 25 years ago.
What do you think you're playing at? Where's your blazer? I've decided to put my own spin on the uniform this year. I'll spin you across that floor. Get your blazer on. I'm not a clone. I should be allowed to express my individuality. Jerry, pass me the wooden spoon.
Chloe, do you think I could pull off that jacket?
No, to be honest, I think I could pull it off anyway better. But anyway, ahead of the series launch at the start of last month, we sent our entertainment reporter Mackenzie Pomeroy to catch up with Lisa McGee to ask her about her original aims for the programme.
Something I set out to do was to show that a side of Northern Ireland that hadn't been shown maybe before. Everything that every film or TV show or play from here tended to be quite bleak, brilliant, a lot of them amazing pieces of work, but I just we're so funny here, I think, and there's so much more to us in our history, so I wanted to put the politics way into the background and just show that really lovely human warmth that people here have, and so that, I don't know if it's a message as much as it's just wanting to show off that, I'm very proud to be from here, and I wanted to just sort of get the chance to show it off a bit.
I love the show, and I feel like I can even relate to it, even as an American.
That's so lovely to hear. Yeah, I think there's this sort of, everyone's been young as well, and there's something universal about that, isn't there? So
yeah. In school.
To teenage years, yeah.
After speaking to Lisa, I was eager to catch up with people from Derry, Londonderry to hear their thoughts on the programme and if they feel the show accurately represents them during the 90s.
Oh, I just love the fun and the giggles and how it just helps you to remember how things were at school yourself. There's an awful lot that they do that resonates with how I was at school, and a lot of the memories come back. So it's really good fun.
Humour, their body language, and to say their sayings. You know, we all have a saying from different places where you come from, different counties.
Just love it because it portrays how Derry really is. We were really busy getting different things done.
Even though it's Derry Girls, the Catholic schools in Ireland were all the same as boys, girls, so we just look at it and think that was us.
We're from Belfast, but I want to be a Derry girl.
Adding to the extensive collection of murals in Derry and Londonderry, a Derry Girls mural was commissioned to be painted on the side of the Badger. The owner of the Badger, Mr. McDade, welcomes being selected as the home of the new Derry Girls art piece.
Channel 4 got in touch with me last November, relating to that they had selected 3 or 4 sites around the city, but this is the most preferable one, so I give them the okay to go ahead with it. So they started it in January and did it in a few days. Derry Girls hasn't changed. Derry Girls is about Derry and exactly tells the story of what the Derry was and what Derry is. And that's a part of the success, because they're telling a true identity of what we are and where we come from. I think it's very exciting. Well, the programme is a success because of the nature of it and the story that it tells, that it's a down-to-earth sort of behaviour of what was happening at that particular time and what is happening at today, as well as that, you know. So it tells a true story and true reflection of the city and the kids and where they come from and their background and their school days and the attitude towards that. It's telling a true story. The accent is quite a broad accent, or wide accent should I say, and it wouldn't be so acceptable if it wasn't understandable. So I accept it for that. Yeah, I think it is very much acceptable throughout the world.
Well, the wet and windy weather certainly didn't dampen their spirits.
Did you get a chance to watch last night's show?
I actually didn't, but could you tell me what happened?
Oh, you missed a lot. It was drama over a broken TV. Never heard the likes of it in my life. Literally, we've got about 3 TVs in our house, and they're complaining over missing Carrie for 1 week. Anyway, now joining us in the studio, we have BBC Arts and Education correspondent Robbie Meredith to talk about the Derry Girls phenomenon.
Hi, Robbie. My first question to you is, why has Derry Girls become such a sensation?
Well, I think, Chloe, it's brilliantly written. It's very funny. It's also got a cast of characters, I think, like any good sitcom, that you can laugh at and laugh with. It reminds me a bit of the In-Betweeners, although it's much more rooted in a place than the In-Betweeners. And in the In-Betweeners, you have a cast of characters who, in some ways, we laugh at their own idea of themselves. And I think we do that also with Derry Girls, but also 4 very distinct female characters, strong characters of different types. And it reminds us also of our youth and how we used to get on with our friends. So I think there's lots of reasons why Derry Girls has been successful.
And we've seen that the show recently won the Royal Television Society's Best Scripted Comedy a few months ago. How much of that do you think is down to the writing style of Lisa McGee?
Well, I think what's interesting about Lisa McGee, and obviously she was a former student here, so began to write here. I mean, she's been writing for a long time. She's worked for 20 years to be an overnight success. And I think the interesting thing is she's writing about her school days, she's writing about a city and a time that she knows, but with an outsider's eye, both in, I suppose, kind of chronological terms. She's writing of a time 20 years ago. She's looking back on some of the absurdities of her school days. But also Lisa McGee has lived outside of Derry for quite a long time. So again, I think you've got that ideal combination of someone who knows intimately what they're writing about, but looks at it from, I suppose, a kind of critical distance as well.
And obviously we're looking at the idea of looking back. And why do you think the lifestyle and culture of the 1990s, Derry, Londonderry, has appealed so much to the viewers at the minute?
Well, I think for people like me who are much older than you, I'm in my 40s, there is a nostalgia industry. And also there's clever use, for instance, of the music from the 90s. We like to look back at our school days of that time. I recognise some of the things me and my friends, obviously very different I'm not a girl for a start, but we recognise some of the things that we get up to, some of the absurdities, some of the ways we used to get on with each other. So I think the interesting thing is this has gone, it's massive in Northern Ireland, the viewing figures are big, but obviously they're big right across the UK, so it taps into, whether you live in Dundee, Dagenham or Derry, it's tapping into that nostalgia that people my age have for the 1990s.
And in terms of everyone from different areas, One thing that kind of unites them, I feel, is the Derry slang. It's used a lot in the show. What do you think is the importance of maybe like the globalization of that slang across different audiences and markets?
Well, it's strange. To someone like me, it doesn't seem that unfamiliar, perhaps, and because of Northern Ireland. I don't think it overuses colloquialism, so you don't feel that you actually have to come from Derry to understand the characters, which is why I think it has such good viewing figures across the UK, around 2.5 million viewers per episode, which is very, very high for a sitcom. So obviously it gets that balance right between the colloquialism and the local references to Derry, but also the wider references that most viewers across the UK can understand.
100%.
And obviously, from your knowledge, what's the reception been to the second series so far?
Well, the audience figures, I suppose, are the best way to do that. Critically, it's got a good reception. The audience figures are very high, about 3.2 viewers. That's consolidated viewers. That's across the live episode, but also all those catch-up services as well. That was for the first episode. It's dropped slightly to around 2.5 million viewers, but that is still incredibly healthy for a Channel 4 sitcom. In fact, the first episode of the second series was the highest viewing figures for any Channel 4 sitcom for a decade. So actually, there's been a success there. What's interesting, though, is that we're beginning to see, and this is when you know a program's a success, you get that slight backlash. You know, you already get some of that reaction on Twitter saying, oh, the second series wasn't quite as funny as the first and so on. But I think what we'll get soon is a backlash against the backlash. If you know.
Being able to fix itself, yeah, I definitely agree. Robbie, thank you very much for joining us. And you can catch the series finale of the second series of Derry Girls on Tuesday, April 9th on Channel 4 at 9:15 p.m. Now, you might find it interesting to know that Stormont's building is 365 feet wide, representing 1 foot for every day of the year. The building's very design is built around the idea of effective governance of Northern Ireland. You're likely to be wondering why I'm telling you this.
Well, it's been over 2 years since Northern Ireland's devolved executive collapsed after the failed renewable energy scheme, RHI. 2 years on from the collapse, and are we any closer to Stormont reopening its doors?
Shockingly, it appears not. The lack of executive power has led to Northern Ireland falling vastly behind other parts of the UK in the passage of important social legislation, leaving minority communities feeling betrayed.
With the passage of same-sex marriage becoming law in the rest of the UK in 2014 and the Republic of Ireland in 2015, the lack of this legislation has left a great deal of uncertainty in the minds of the members of the LGBTQ+ community. Our Home Affairs correspondent, Shelley McVeigh, speaks to Declan Arthurs about growing up identifying as a queer person in Northern Ireland.
The LGBT community are one that's getting recognised all over Europe and the UK. Today, I am in the heart of Northern Ireland, Belfast, a place where diversity and identity is rife. However, in 2019, it is still deemed a place where not everyone is equal.
I'm Declan Arthurs and I identify as a queer person here in north of Ireland in Belfast. Every day in school I would experience homophobia, and also when I went out with friends on like a night out or just getting slandered and dirty remarks thrown at me left, right and centre.
Obviously, the Assembly has not been running for 2 years now. Are you disappointed with the lack of legislation, the lack of communication from our government, and especially for people like you in the LGBT community?
Well, obviously I'm absolutely disgusted with the lack of basic human rights that we are given, because we are humans. People like to put labels on us. Yes, we may be gay or queer, the umbrella term that I like to use, and a lot of other queer people like to use. But at the end of the day, we are human and we deserve basic human rights. And with people sitting up in Stormont, etc., not doing their jobs and still on a salary, getting a pay rise of £13,000, if I'm correct in saying, is an absolute disgrace, in my opinion. It's like, I can't fathom it in my head. Like, they can do what they want to do, but if we want to have a same-sex partner, it's completely against the law.
Same-sex marriage is not legal in Northern Ireland despite 5 attempts to introduce it within the Assembly.
Over the last 2 years we haven't had any government at all, and that has, I suppose, frozen a number of issues, including same-sex marriage, where you may have possibly seen some kind of movement, but you're not seeing anything because there is no Stormont Assembly. Now, that said, if the Assembly was to come back tomorrow, you couldn't necessarily say there will be any big change on this, because the DUP and other unionists have stood against introducing same-sex marriage, and obviously they think that their baseline voters still support them, even if maybe some of the younger people in their own communities wouldn't be supporting them. So it may well be that if the Assembly came back tomorrow, that another petition of concern would be put down, and even if there was a majority vote for same-sex marriage, it would still be vetoed.
Today, here we are in Stormont, and as you can see, it's pretty empty. With the collapse of the Assembly over 2 years ago now, it's hard to see any legislation or anything passing anytime soon. Today, we are here to talk to MLA Stephen Agnew.
There are people who at this point are being denied the right to marry, or people who are getting married in other countries and coming to Northern Ireland and effectively having their marriage downgraded to a civil partnership. It's not right, and we're in a situation now where we're either relying on the courts to say that the situation must be changed, and or Westminster to legislate.
The Rainbow Project has consistently worked to ensure that the needs of the LGBT people are met in provision of services in law and socially.
Are you hopeful that in the future, with the younger generation, that legislation such as the blood ban, same-sex marriage will move forward and will be living in a completely different society?
I think we already are in many ways. I think younger generations today are much more likely to know an LGBT person, and that's been one of the big barriers to us in the past, is that we weren't visible. And as our world has changed, LGBT people have gotten braver and much more visible with the protections in our jobs, which were only introduced in 2007, which meant that we couldn't lose our job for being an LGBT person. That meant that we could start being open and honest about who we are in the workplace. The introduction of civil partnerships meant that we could, under the law, have our relationships recognised as equal. And all of that has made LGBT people and same-sex relationships much more visible than they ever had before.
I asked Declan where he finds support in Belfast.
So there's a lot of safe spaces, like you have places where you can go and chat. The Rainbow Project, which is an amazing facility for queer people alike to use, and it's always open to anyone who needs it.
Thank you to Declan Arthurs for being brave enough to speak about an issue so close to his heart. And Shelley now joins Harry and I in the studio to tell us a little bit more.
Thanks, guys. So, is Northern Ireland the worst place to be queer in the UK? Well, according to the International Gay and Lesbian Association, this may well be the case. Northern Ireland came in last in a recent poll regarding equal rights in the UK. So what exactly is it that makes Northern Ireland different? It was the last place in the UK to legalise homosexuality in 1982, 15 years after England and Wales. And in 2011, the rest of the UK lifted the lifelong ban on gay men donating blood. But the Northern Irish Executive did not repeal this ban. Then, in 2014, the Northern Ireland Assembly chose not to implement Westminster's equal marriage legislation. Northern Ireland now is the only part of the UK where same-sex marriage is illegal, despite the fact there has been 5 separate votes in the Northern Ireland Assembly calling for the introduction of marriage equality. The lack of progress on this legislation before the Assembly's closure was due to the DUP's petition of concern, which in effect vetoed a majority vote in the Assembly to block the introduction of marriage equality due to a strong DUP majority. A legal attempt to challenge this ban was made in 2017, but no further progress was made, with the judge deciding that the issue of same-sex marriage was for the Stormont Assembly and not the courts. But what do you think? Join in our conversation on Twitter with the hashtag #FreshPerspective and follow us on QTV Belfast on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram.
Joining us on the sofa with Shelley is freelance journalist and political commentator Amanda Ferguson to speak about the impact of the lack of the same-sex marriage legislation on the members of the LGBTQ+ community and the impasse within the Northern Irish Executive. First and foremost, Amanda, are we any closer to seeing Stormont reopen its doors as a power-sharing assembly?
I don't think so. I'd like to be able to give you some good news, but I can't see Stormont coming back anytime soon. I think that there's a number of factors that complicate that. First of all, the relationship between the two biggest parties, between the DUP and Sinn Féin, is really at a low ebb. It's a pretty poor state of affairs for them. The second thing that makes it complicated is the confidence and supply arrangement at Westminster between the DUP and the Tories. So I don't know how much longer that's going to last for, but at the moment it's difficult to see how a British Government Secretary of State could get talks convened and be viewed as an honest broker in the negotiations. And then obviously the third massive thing is Brexit. So unfortunately I can't see, never say never, but I can't see it happening anytime soon.
And how critical do you think the last 2 years have actually been in terms of Northern Ireland's ability to govern in the future?
Well, I think that a lot has changed over the last 2 years. I think that you can see with the number of people that are talking about Irish unity and talking about border polls that we're in a sort of different dispensation at the moment. I think that the two main parties would both benefit from power sharing coming back again. So I think that there may be a return to Stormont for them. Obviously, they will both want it for very different reasons. But there's a lot of people that I talk to that are really frustrated about the lack of progress there's been on a whole pile of different social issues. And they're not really missing Stormont. You know, no one's really marching on it, demanding it to come back.
100%.
And asking yourself, Amanda and Shelley as well, why do you think Northern Ireland is so behind the rest of the UK in terms of this sort of legislation?
Do you want to go?
Well, obviously, in our politics, religion is very wrapped up in it, and because we don't have a government at the minute, nothing's getting through clearly. And I feel like that there is certain opinions from certain parties that really push forward their opinion and don't represent the majority minorities within Northern Ireland. So obviously we've seen Declan in the VT, a personal story, and obviously he is clearly frustrated with the lack of legislation, the lack of recognition as a queer person here in Northern Ireland, because his government doesn't recognise him either. So that's what I feel about it.
Yeah, I think one of the major problems is, you know, I've covered the marriage equality story for the 10 years that I've been a journalist, and I've spoken to all the different perspectives. I've spoken to people protesting Pride, people enjoying themselves at Pride, young people experiencing mental health issues, the full spectrum and all the parties as well. And before the Assembly collapsed, a marriage equality motion had come before Stormont on 5 occasions, and it finally passed on the last occasion. So that was then blocked by the DUP using the petition of concern. So that's a very direct example of why that hasn't been introduced here. Obviously we don't have a government. We're sort of in this limbo land where it's not quite direct rule, it's not quite civil servants who are in charge taking decisions. So it's been pretty appalling, to be honest, because I don't think that any other part of the UK or any other part of Ireland would tolerate this.
And within that, would you say that Northern Ireland's gay friendly, and do you think queer people are discriminated against here at all?
I think that gay people are being discriminated against at the moment, but on the flip side of that, I do think that Belfast is an LGBT friendly city. You only have to see the tens of thousands of people that line the streets whenever Pride takes place, and all of those events that take place over Pride Week. But certainly it's not fair that British citizens in Northern Ireland, Irish citizens in the North are being denied the rights that are enjoyed by other British and Irish citizens. I think that has to change.
100%. And a big thank you very much, Amanda and Shelley, for joining us on the couch this evening. Next, they're one of Belfast's most upcoming acts, taking the city and country by storm, playing to packed and ecstatic venues ever since their formation just over a year ago, with audiences as far as Liverpool and New York.
But who exactly are 2Degrees? Fresh from the release of their latest single, Moon Dancing, we're going to catch up with them later in the show. Have a listen.
We're looking forward to meeting the boys later on in the show. But first, Belfast-born Marcus Robinson has become an internationally acclaimed filmmaker after his work rebuilding the World Trade Center. This achieved critical praise due to its documentation of the 8-year rebuild of Ground Zero using time-lapse imagery.
The BAFTA award-winning documentarian who now lives in New York was back in Belfast recently for the premiere of his latest film, An Engineer Imagines, documenting the life of Dundalk's Peter Rice, one of the 20th century's most prolific engineers.
Rice worked on some of the century's most important architectural pieces, including the Sydney Opera House and Lloyd's Building. Our reporter Ellen Hanaway managed to catch up with Marcus when he was back in Belfast for the premiere.
Marcus Robinson has been regarded as one of Northern Ireland's most esteemed documentary filmmakers ever since his film, Rebuilding the World Trade Centre, was met with universal acclaim. He's back in Belfast this week for the release of his latest film, An Engineer Imagines, showcasing the life and works of Dundalk-born Peter Rice. We sat down with Marcus in the Queen's Film Theatre just before his premiere to discuss engineering, filmmaking, and exactly what influences his work.
I mean, for me, I think documentary making is about telling really engaging, beautiful stories and stories of human interest. And I think the extraordinary thing about documentary making is that there's continually new and extraordinary stories that are available. You may sort of think, well, every documentary has been done before. But like even in the area that I live in Brooklyn, every day I'm sort of inspired by the people and inspired by the history of the area and how things that happened in the past can be related to contemporary life. I'd never heard of Peter before, to my shame, and he was an absolute revelation to me. Brendan and Brian asked me to make a film to direct and come up with an idea to make a film about Peter Rice, which would be a homage to his life. You know, what's often referred to these days as a biopic, but I wanted to make something much more that would also have an allegorical value, because Peter's story to me is an inspiration about legacy and about each of us being of service to a bigger picture with our creative gifts and our humanity. I think he went to Queen's in the late 50s, early 60s, so at that time it was much less usual for someone from the then Republic of Ireland to come to Queen's University in Northern Ireland. And I think in a way it just stands for what this great university is all about, sort of bringing people from all different backgrounds together and having the highest values for education and innovation and going, you know, pushing the boundaries of education and modern thought. One of the key things for me was creating a language using visuals and music. So when I was still a photographer, I bought a little Super 16 Bolex camera, which is it's a sort of clockwork hand crank camera which you can do time lapse and animation with. So I experimented with that and then started making little film clips that were cut together to sort of deep house and drum and bass. So that's how the whole documentary thing started. When I lived in Paris, I was an mainly architectural photography, black and white and large format colour photography. But because I loved music and I was really into both classical music and jazz and also the whole dance music, electro, hip hop scene, I just loved having music and images working together. So the initial films that I made were using time-lapse cinematography cut to music. And in a way, then the natural progression was then to work with creating interviews and intercutting areas of visuals and music cut together. So it was really a desire to bring musical landscape and sound landscape with visuals. I think the advice that I would give is to follow your own inner spirit, follow your own heart. And each of us has a specific gift to explore and to give and to share with the world. There's no shortage or no scarcity of ideas and amazing things to contribute. And more than ever, I think there's a scope for talented people to share stories and films that touch and inspire people. And I think that take a stand for human values and for things that the human race need to be, you know, that we need to keep alive.
So a big thank you to Marcus Robinson for kindly agreeing to sit down and chat with us. An Engineer Imagines is now in theatres up and down the country, so make sure to check it out. If you have an interest in independent films showcasing local talent, then check out Queen's Film Theatre for more.
A huge thanks to Marcus, who kindly agreed to sit down and speak to us, and thank you to Queen's Film Theatre for letting us film. Make sure to check out the latest information on film listings at queensfilmtheatre.com to catch a multitude of insightful independent pictures.
Joining us now in the studio, we have Jordan Shivers and Matthew Mullen, better known as 2Degrees. Guys, before anything, I must ask, the name 2Degrees, where's that from?
It's kind of a,
Jordan.
It's a weird one. We were thinking of a lot of names at the start, and it was number one with the pellet burners because of the Arlene Foster scandal, which is the worst name ever invented. It was absolutely terrible. But we were sitting at my house one day and just like, we need a name because it's just Matthew and Jordan. It's so boring. And my father came in with a piece of paper, didn't even speak, just gave us a piece of paper, and we sat and looked through them. They were 90% of them were terrible, and the bottom was just 2 degrees. And we were like, actually, not a good ring to it, like, so just went from there.
Well, I was studying a degree, and so were you, but you dropped out, and I got my degree, so it should be 1 degree and a dropout, like.
And it's been a huge 12 months for you. How did you two initially get together?
Well, whenever I was 18, I was doing a gig in the Elk in Morfalt, and I was singing away, and this lad came up to me and was like, "Can I play guitar?" And it was Jordan, and he was class, but I actually didn't see him again for another 4 years when I was in Hatfield for my birthday, and I was kind of drunk, and then the next day I got a text from him saying, "By the way, what you said last night, do you want to meet up and start playing?"
He didn't have a notion.
And then we met up and did a gig in the Hatfield, which was very good of them because we were completely out of our depth, but we loved it, so we just went from strength to strength from there, you know, and writing songs and performing everywhere.
Just a lot of playing. Like, what did you done? 200 and something, 200.
A few, like.
A lot, like.
And getting into writing the songs, you released your first single, "It's Over." You're now back with Moon Dancing. Yeah. Could you just give us an idea of kind of the writing and the creative process that goes into making the songs?
Yeah, well, Matthew, your friend.
Yeah, Ross Lavery, who actually was a student at Queen's here, he worked with me at PwC, and I kept saying to him, I want to write songs, and he kept saying, I make songs, but I never actually listened to him until one day he was like, "Lad, like I can produce a song for you." So I'm back to his house, and Jordan came the next day, and then we just started writing, but It's Over came from Jordan. He came up with a melody, so he did.
It's weird the way it starts. Like, you just sit there playing, and then all of a sudden it becomes a song. Like, we have people don't know this, we have I'd say about 9 or 10 versions of It's Over. Like, they all sound different. That's the way it is. Like, that's the thing about a song. It can sound different and it changes every time. And I think everybody knows it's a breakup song, but it's a happy breakup song. Yeah. Maybe not happy, like, but.
Where can we catch 2Degrees in Belfast and keep up to date with your social media?
Facebook and Instagram, number 1, and then Belfast.
Yeah, Instagram. Jordan's more followers than me, so he just reminded me, so
jealous.
Well, what's your Instagram? We got the follow stuff coming on.
At 2Degrees Music, so like us and out there and follow us. Yeah.
We'll make sure. Guys, thank you very much for coming in there.
Cheers.
2Degrees will be performing at the end of the show, so make sure to stay tuned for that.
As you may be aware, Northern Ireland has emerged as an international film hub with the most successful fantasy TV series ever made, Game of Thrones, being shot in 25 different locations across the country.
In total, 9 TV dramas and 6 feature films were made here in the last 12 months. Northern Ireland's popularity as a filming location is estimated to be worth £270 million to the economy.
A booming film industry that shows no signs of slowing down, with a Game of Thrones prequel currently in the works.
To discover a little more about this phenomenon, our film and television correspondent Hannah Bussingham went to explore what precisely it is about Northern Ireland that gives it an element of mystique for fantasy drama.
Ireland has a history rich in culture, knowledge and struggles. However, it thrived as a country, including being at the forefront of engineering at times. It was this success that led to Ireland's first ties with the Hollywood film industry. Northern Ireland won the bid to host the Game of Thrones series by the skin of its teeth. According to the location finder for the series, it was the studio space, as well as the vast scenery, that led to the production coming here. This was a big break for Northern Ireland and other filmmakers alike. In recent years, Northern Ireland has become a hub for productions. Behind me we have the studio set for HBO's Game of Thrones, which was a huge success both for the company, but also for Northern Ireland's reputation as a location for productions. Broadcast in 199 territories worldwide and watched by over 18 million viewers, Game of Thrones is one of the most popular TV series to date. In critical terms, it has 38 Emmy Awards, the most ever received for a single TV series. This has had a huge impact on tourism in Northern Ireland, with location tours and merchandise widely available here at locations such as Gosford and Castle Ward. So what has this done for filmmakers here?
Telling the stories, it's the main thing for me. Yeah.
Sai Kelly is an independent filmmaker from Northern Ireland.
There are people who have left as well to pursue their career elsewhere, who have always been advocates for the talent that's here, and people wouldn't have really, maybe the world might not have recognized that and thought we had anything going for us, but they've started to take note of that. So I remember watching Lord of the Rings and seeing a lot of the scenery and thinking that section there could be Northern Ireland. And I kind of realized we have some really, really good backgrounds. And what's really helpful for the production office is how close these locations are together. The scenery changes really quickly. So we've got mountains, we've got big tall hills at one point, and we've got the sea right next to it. Then we've got places that you could shoot for desert scenes like they have in Game of Thrones. We've got a good variety of different backdrops in this country, all so close together, which saves a lot of money in travel for crews going out and stuff. Scenery shots or background shots or moments, pieces to camera, I went and shot here because it's beautiful here as well. So whenever you're shooting for a foreign market, like Americans love Northern Ireland. They love Ireland, they love the scenery. So whenever they get to see Tollymore featured, like, oh my goodness, I want to go there. So it all helps everything, tourism, jobs over here, films and everything.
But what gives Northern Ireland the edge when it comes to filming these mystical pieces?
I love the mood that comes with our weather, that comes with our rolling green fields, that comes with our rain and our drabness sometimes. It really adds to that, to move our scenes, I think. Yeah. We do have something here.
I think the fact that it's always quite dark and gloomy really adds to that, even in terms of weather and stuff, because it does give you those sort of weird lighting and such. We have a lot of especially for fantasy that's set in older times, before technology, we have a lot of greenery and fields and stuff.
Yeah, mystical locations. Things that the Game of Thrones, the dark hedges, that's it.
The people who over here, the talent over here, they work really, really hard. We have a really good name for ourselves, for the crew, just work their butts off. I think we're easy to get along with, and we work hard. I think that's good for us.
With more productions coming here to use these fantastic locations and more hidden gems such as these to find, it's safe to say we'll be seeing much more of Northern Ireland on our screens.
Thank you, Hannah, for delving into Northern Ireland's mystical landscape and getting to the bottom of Northern Ireland's filming appeal.
During the VT, we chose Brenda and Tim from our lovely studio audience to take part in our quiz, testing their knowledge of Northern Irish productions. Guys, we're going to show you different filming locations, all from Northern Ireland. All you have to do is tell us what show they're on.
Sounds good.
So, first one up on the screen. Oh, it's Castle.
Any idea?
Blimey.
We can give you a clue if you want.
Yeah, just please. Castle Ward.
Castle Ward.
Castle Ward.
Castle Ward, ring any bells?
Game of Thrones.
Just because there's a castle, I would go Game of Thrones, right?
Yeah.
Game of Thrones, so it's a majority for Game of Thrones. Well, let's see if Game of Thrones is the first answer.
Hey,
Yay, well done.
Is that 1 point each?
Bit of a darker, yeah. Well, group efforts going on here. That's
that was good.
1-0 against us, I guess.
Our second one here is here.
Oof.
Line of Duty.
I was thinking the same thing.
That was a pretty quick answer.
That was very quick off the cuff. I mean, I'm looking at that and it just looks like the city centre somewhere. I wouldn't have a clue.
Well, we'll have a wee look here. Line of Duty.
Line of Duty.
Oh.
Unlucky.
That was close. That was close. Okay. And a third one?
And third and final, hopefully this will be a bit more stumpy.
Okay.
We hope.
Hey. Right, okay.
Do you know the location or anything?
No.
No.
It's in Belfast.
To be honest, it does look
It's
like
in
every
Belfast.
other street.
If you believe it or not, it's actually very close to Queen's.
Can I nick her answer then? Say Line of Duty.
We're not going to reuse to This is the third one's always the toughest. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta really think about
Probably
this one.
the last answer I gave, isn't it?
Is that your answer?
Yeah.
Line of duty?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but go for it.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Line of duty
Team
again.
effort.
Yeah. Come on, I'm going to get it right the second time.
Is it gonna be it?
Yay!
Hey.
Well done. Well done.
Oh, it's a fist bump we're going for.
That was fantastic.
Teamwork
Thanks for
is the
playing along
teamwork, I
with us.
guess.
Thank you.
Nailed it.
Thank you. Well, it's been an amazing show, hasn't it?
It really has been indeed. A great debut for the Fresh Perspective. Thank you to everyone for tuning in to Queen's University Belfast's first ever live student television broadcast and the first edition of Fresh Perspective. Everyone involved in tonight's programme are on the second year BA broadcast production pathway. But thank you to everyone at Queen's University's Sonic Arts Research Centre for helping to make this broadcast possible.
And a shout out to everyone who got involved using the hashtag Fresh Perspective and to you all in the studio. To close the show with a bang with our latest single, Moon Dancing, it's 2 Degrees. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Friends, just friends tonight. I can feel something I could hold it tight. I have the slightest notion I'm not gonna let you go, no, not tonight. 'Cause we can go all night, moon dancing off your eyes. But darling, just forget them others if you don't mind. If you don't mind. If you don't mind. Let's pretend that you're mine. We'll go somewhere dark where we used to hide. But now we're older, I'm not gonna let you go, no, not tonight. 'Cause we can go all night, moon dancing off your eyes. But darling, just forget them others if you don't mind. 'Cause we can go all night with the wind rushing through your hair. We can get so high that we don't even care. We can go all night, moon dancing off your eyes. But darling, just forget them others if you don't mind. If you don't mind.
Thank you. Thanks.